"You're nearly 30 and still stocking shelves," my dad said, not even flinching. "You're a disgrace to this family." I stood up and vanished. It wasn't always like this. There was a time I thought, maybe, just maybe if I worked hard enough, kept my head down, did the right thing, they'd see me. Not just glance over me, not just nod while talking about Celia, but actually see me. But I was wrong. Growing up, there was a clear pecking order in the Daniels household. Celia was the star, the prodigy, the shining future. And me, I was the background noise, the afterthought, a shadow trailing behind her spotlight. She got straight A's and applause at every turn. I got B's, the occasional A, and silence. The kind that isn't just empty, but loud in its rejection. No matter how hard I worked, it was like I wasn't even speaking the same language as them. I wasn't lazy, far from it. While Celia was winning science fairs and decoding textbooks at the kitchen table, I was rebuilding an old Dell desktop from salvage parts, fixing up our neighbor's rotting deck for cash, learning how to rewire an outlet from YouTube tutorials on a $40 cracked phone. Not flashy, not doctor level, but real work, useful work. But Dad, he never saw it that way. He used to sit in his little home office walls lined with corny motivational posters. Excellence the result of caring more than others, think wise, and tell me that if I didn't chase prestige, I'd end up cleaning up after people who did. Funny thing is, he never moved up a single rung on his own ladder. He was a mid-tier manager for over 10 years, dreaming of a promotion that never came while looking down at his own son for working retail. Mom wasn't much better. A high school teacher obsessed with status by association. Her favorite hobby was humble bragging about Celia to coworkers and neighbors. My daughter just started her rotation at Johns Hopkins, she'd beam. And if I mentioned anything about my life, "That's nice, honey," before pivoting right back to Celia. The day I won the district woodworking competition, I came home with a ribbon and a photo of the bench I'd built. I showed it to my mom. She barely glanced up from her phone and said, "Oh, that's nice. Did you clean up the garage?" Then she went right back to reading Celia's email update about medical internships. I never forgot that. College made it worse. Celia got into a private university with a partial scholarship. My parents. They emptied savings, took out loans, even refinanced the house. I found that out later by accident. They did everything to make sure she had her shot. 2 years later, when it was my turn, they sat me down at the kitchen table and said, "Community college has decent programs. You can work your way through like we did." I remember nodding while my chest burned. That was the moment I realized they don't see potential in me. They see limitation. And when Celia became Dr. Daniels, she walked into the house with her diploma, like a queen returning from war. My dad cried. My mom printed a custom banner for the living room. I stood in the back of the room next to the dog. From that moment on, I didn't just feel ignored, I felt actively attacked, like my very presence made them itch. At one family dinner, my dad looked at me across the table and said, "She's saving lives, and you're scanning barcodes at Target. Makes you wonder what went wrong." He chuckled. I didn't. Neither did my grandparents. But they said nothing. Just a slow, painful silence as my mother added, "Don't be so sensitive. He's just saying, you've got room to improve." Room to improve. Right. The rest of the family joined in over time. Celia called me Marcus, the minimum wager, in front of my cousins once when showing off her new BMW, said I should put it on my name tag. Everyone laughed. I didn't. But I memorized the look on her face, proud, smug, untouched. They had a wall in the hallway called the Achievement Wall. 20 photos of Celia high school valedictorian white coat ceremony medical residency, her posing with a celebrity doctor. Me one dusty photo high school graduation, tucked near the baseboard like a footnote. That wall said everything. I tried not to care. I tried playing the dutiful son. Quiet, present, helpful. One Thanksgiving, I fixed the leaky pipe under the sink after dinner without being asked. No one thanked me. But when Celia mentioned she was shadowing a cardiothoracic surgeon, they brought out champagne. When I showed up with Na, my girlfriend, well, actually, I never brought her, because I knew what would happen. My mom would ask if she had any plans to get a real job, and my dad would compare her to Celia's ex-boyfriend, the neurosurgeon. It wasn't worth it. I protected what mattered by keeping them away from it. But Na was different. Smart, sharp as a tack, and intuitive. She saw the cracks in me before I even acknowledged them. You don't need their permission to matter, she told me once. You already do. She was the first person to say that and mean it. The only other person who ever made me feel like I wasn't broken was my grandfather, Grandpa Walt, a carpenter his whole life. Called his hands his legacy. He gave me my first toolkit when I was 12. Build things, Marcus, he said. The world needs both kinds of builders, head and hand. That stuck with me. So while Celia climbed the ladder our parents handed her, I quietly started building a ladder of my own, one step at a time. But they didn't notice. They never asked, never wondered, never cared. They were too busy asking when I'd finally grow up. To notice I already had. I didn't leave in some dramatic blaze of glory. There wasn't a screaming match or a thrown plate, no viral TikTok moment or slammed doors. What happened was quieter, more final. It started the night my dad leaned back in his chair at another one of those exhausting family dinners, smirked, and said, "Maybe you should shadow Celia at the hospital. See what a real job looks like." Na was sitting next to me for the first time, her first and only appearance at one of these dinners. She gently touched my knee under the table, not to stop me from reacting, but to anchor me, a silent reminder that I wasn't alone. I smiled, took a sip of my water, and said, "Maybe." But that night when we got home, I stayed up, sat in our tiny kitchen with its peeling laminate counter, the one I'd installed myself from a YouTube tutorial because we couldn't afford new cabinets. I looked around. The place wasn't much, but it was mine. Ours. "You okay?" Na asked, walking in with her robe tied tight. I nodded slowly. You ever wonder what they'd say if I just disappeared? She leaned against the wall, arms crossed. No, because they wouldn't say anything real, just the usual, "He never tried hard enough." He could have been something if he applied himself. And then she said the thing that flipped a switch in me. They need you to fail, because if you're not the disappointment, their entire narrative falls apart. That sentence echoed in my skull for days. And then I stopped going. I skipped a birthday, then a Sunday dinner, then another. I didn't explain. I didn't text. I just stopped showing up. I pulled back like a tide going out, quiet and undeniable. Instead, I focused on my real life. 2 years earlier, I'd bought a beat-up duplex on the edge of town. It had water damage, peeling paint, and a foundation that made contractors laugh and shake their heads. I poured everything into it, nights after work, weekends, every dollar I could spare. I refinished the floors myself, learned how to lay tile from a friend, watched plumbing tutorials until my eyes blurred, and when it was finally livable, I rented it, then leveraged that income into a second property, then a third. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was building, quietly, strategically. They had no idea. I didn't tell them about the business license I filed under a generic LLC name, or the cash flow spreadsheets I color-coded like a madman, or the weekends spent in coveralls under floorboards while Celia posted Instagram stories from Tuscany. And the best part, I didn't need them to know. I wasn't doing it for them. I was doing it because I could. But the real fracture, the moment the story split, came when Celia's perfect life started to crack. It started small. Missed calls, shorter holiday visits, an occasional frown that lingered a little too long. Then at Thanksgiving, she showed up without her husband. Brad had a work emergency, she said. But something was off. I found out the truth a week later at the gym when I ran into Brad himself, sweaty, tired, and halfway through an angry rant before realizing who I was. "She never came home, man," he said. "Not in the ways that count. Every birthday, every anniversary, every vacation we planned canceled, for work, or worse, for your parents." That hit harder than I expected. He wasn't yelling. He sounded defeated. "She cares more about making your parents proud than being happy." Those words sat with me, haunted me. I started noticing the signs the designer bags under her eyes weren't Prada. They were exhaustion. Her carefully curled hair started showing roots. Her posture changed. Even her laugh started sounding like it was trying too hard. 3 months later, at our grandparents' 50th anniversary party, Celia showed up in plain scrubs. She announced calmly, like she was presenting a case, that she and Brad were divorced. My mom immediately put her hand to her chest like someone had died. "These things happen to busy professionals," she said with a sideways glance at me, as if I was the problem, as if my mere existence threw off the family narrative. My dad added, "At least she accomplished something before the setback." I almost burst out laughing. That night, Grandpa Walt found me near the punch bowl and handed me a folded napkin. "You notice how they never ask how you're really doing," he said quietly. "That's their loss. You keep building. Loud ones burn out first." He had no idea how right he was. By then, I owned 3 properties and was closing on a 4th, a small 4-unit that needed serious work but promised solid cash flow. I still showed up for my shifts at Target a few days a week, just enough to keep insurance, but most of my income came from what I was building with my hands. Still, every time I saw my parents, it was the same sneers, same jokes. At Christmas dinner, my mom asked, "When was your last promotion?" My dad chimed in, "Your sister saves lives." "What do you save?" I didn't answer. Celia flinched slightly, but she said nothing. That's when I knew. Their golden child was starting to rust. And still, they couldn't see it, wouldn't see it. But I did, and I knew she did too. The next morning, my phone rang. I was fixing a leaky sink in the new 4-unit head shoved under the cabinet. "Caller ID, Dad." I groaned. "We need you to switch weekends for your grandmother's birthday," he said the moment I answered. "Celia has a conference." "No, please, no, we need you to accommodate Celia." Again. "Actually, I can't," I replied, wiping rust from my palms. "Target can't spare you." He scoffed. "Not Target," I said flatly. There was a pause. "What other work projects?" Another pause. Then, "This is family, Marcus. I don't understand why you can't be more like your sister." I bit my tongue. Not yet, I thought. They'll know. Just not now. Instead, I texted, "Nah, it's time." Her reply came seconds later. "Let them sleep on their fantasy. We've got blueprints." And that was it. I vanished from their narrative. No updates, no calls, no photos. Just a ghost in their family album. But I wasn't disappearing. I was preparing. Now called it the best worst-kept secret in the family. Because while my parents were still chuckling about my little cashier job, I was collecting rent from 5 different tenants, negotiating a refinance on a 4-plex, and building out a quiet but sturdy empire under a name they'd never even Googled. Celia didn't know either. Not really. She knew I managed some units. That's what I let her believe when she called me crying at midnight, broke, divorced, and 2 months behind on bills. She was too ashamed to tell Mom and Dad. But she called me. "Marcus, I don't know where else to go," she whispered. I stared at the ceiling in silence. Na curled beside me, already waking from the noise. I could have said no. I had every reason. But that wasn't who I wanted to be. "There's a unit in a duplex on Westfield. I can get you in," I told her. She hesitated. "How much is rent?" "We'll figure it out later." What I didn't say was, "I own it. And 4 others. And I made $20,000 last month after expenses." She showed up the next day with 3 suitcases, and that looked the one I used to wear years ago when I came home from yet another shift to a cold apartment, and no applause. It was surreal seeing her like that. This woman who used to be perfect now looked like a dropped porcelain doll, scuffed hollow, cracking around the edges. I handed her the keys, gave her a rundown, and left out the part where I was her landlord. She sat down on the floor and stared at the ceiling. "Thanks," she whispered. Later, she asked if I'd take a look at her resume. I blinked. Celia, my sister, asking me for career advice. She sent it over and I tore through it like I would a faulty lease agreement. Looked good on paper, but it was generic. No passion, no strategy. I rewrote whole sections, quantified her achievements, showed her how to position herself beyond just doctor looking for work. She texted, "This is incredible. Where did you learn this?" "Some of us had to," I replied. Ever watchful raised an eyebrow that night. "She's going to figure it out soon," she said. "Maybe," I replied, "but I'm not ready for that conversation yet." Then my phone rang. "Mom," fake concerned sugar-sweet tone. "Marcus, honey, I heard you helped your sister find a little place. That was thoughtful. No thank you. No acknowledgement. Just surprised that I'd done something useful." Then came the ask. "She should stay with us. She needs to be with family." I paused. "Did you ask her what she wants?" "Well, no." "Maybe try that." Click. Dad called next, blunter. "She doesn't need to burden you. We've got plenty of room." "Oh, did she tell you she wanted to move back in silence?" Then more posturing. "She's between positions. Very normal in medicine." "Right," I said. "Well, ask her." Click. They didn't know the truth that she was flat broke, that she'd lost her job 3 months ago, that the BMW had been repossessed, that she was Ubering to interviews and pretending she was just busy. But I knew, and then I heard her. One afternoon, I stopped by the duplex to fix a leaking faucet. I walked in using the maintenance key and heard her in the kitchen. On the phone. "Mom, I can't ask him for that. I don't even know how much he makes. He's helping me already. He's a Target cashier, not a bank." I froze. They were planning to ask me for money. My hands curled around the wrench tighter. I didn't barge in. I didn't raise my voice. I just stood there for a beat and then got back to fixing the damn faucet. She came out startled. "How long have you been here long enough?" She swallowed hard. "If they send you to ask me for money." I didn't look up. "You're out." That clear. She nodded, quiet, shaken. That night, I told Na everything. She wasn't surprised. "They used her," she said, "and now they're circling to find their next provider. But you saw it coming." I nodded. "They have no clue what I actually make." Na smiled. "And that's why you're dangerous. They don't even know who they're dealing with." Days passed. I stayed quiet. Then one morning, Celia caught me on the way out. "They want me to move back," she said. "What did you tell them that I'm staying?" "Why?" She looked around the duplex, small, plain old, because for the first time in years, I don't feel like I'm pretending. I'm not perfect here. I'm just me. I didn't say anything, but I felt something shift. Then Grandma called. Dinner. Us. You, Celia. And your parents. I was about to decline when Grandpa got on the line. "Marcus," he said, voice low, "I think it's time." I didn't know what he meant then, but I would, and so would everyone else. If you've ever found yourself in my shoes, quietly enduring, wondering, what did I ever do wrong, then maybe this story isn't just mine anymore. One subscribe is enough to let me know you're still here, and you understand. Na and I showed up to my grandparents' house with polite smiles and guarded hearts. We knew what this was: a stage, a trap, a final attempt to wrap me back into the narrative they'd written without me. Celia was already there, hair brushed but no makeup, wearing a simple sweater, jeans, and those same worn sneakers she'd been rotating for weeks. My parents sat stiffly on the floral couch like statues at a museum no one visited anymore. Dinner was tense from the start. My mom smiled at Na with thinly veiled skepticism, trying to mask judgment as politeness. "So, still working at that little bookstore?" she asked. Na smiled. "Yes, and still reading more than most people I know." My dad chuckled. "Hey, as long as someone's bringing in money, right?" Then he turned to Na. "Bet you weren't expecting to date a Target cashier. You must really be into charity work." I felt Na's hand tighten around mine under the table. She didn't flinch, just smiled and said I'm more into character than credentials. They didn't get it. They never did. We got through the meal. Grandma served her famous cornbread casserole and Grandpa carved the roast. But the moment we put our forks down, I saw my dad lean forward with that signature fake sincere tone. "Marcus, he said, folding his napkin. "We wanted to talk to you about something important." I nodded, careful. "Sure." "As you know, Celia's been going through a little career transition my mom jumped in, and it's been a bit straining on the family." Celia said nothing. She stared at her plate like it held the answers she'd never found in medical school. Dad continued. "She's done so much for us, helped with travel, house repairs, even groceries some months." My mom smiled tightly. She understood that family supports each other. Then she turned to me. "And now it's your turn." There it was. The ask. They didn't say it outright, but we all felt it. The build-up. The blame. The manipulation served lukewarm like the mashed potatoes on the table. I stayed quiet. How much I finally asked flatly. My dad blinked. My mom looked surprised, like they weren't expecting me to cut through their rehearsed performance. "Well, my dad started the roofs leaking again, and your mother's car needs major work, plus property taxes are coming up. About $20,000 would help us stabilize." $20,000. From the family disappointment, the minimum wage mascot, the spare wheel. I set my fork down slowly. "And you think I have that kind of money?" "Well, not all at once," my mom said quickly, "but Celia mentioned you've been doing some property management on the side. Surely you've saved a little." I looked at Celia. Her face flushed red. "I didn't tell them anything specific," she said quietly. "They just kept asking." I nodded, then turned back to my parents. "Let me get this straight," I said, voice low and even. "You've spent the better part of the last 10 years mocking my job, my lifestyle, my choices. You've called me a failure, laughed at me. At Christmas, questioned my intelligence, my worth, my direction. You didn't know I had a girlfriend for 2 years. You've never once asked what I actually do with my life. And now you want a favor, a big one. That's not fair." My dad snapped, his voice rising. Then Grandpa spoke. "It's perfectly fair." The room fell silent. "I've watched you belittle this boy for years," Grandpa said. "June and I have spoken up more than once, but you dismissed us. Now you want his help. Suddenly he's good enough for something." Grandma nodded. "Marcus never asked for anything. Not once. He works hard checks and respects people. That's more than I can say for some." My dad's face turned crimson. "We raised him," he spat. "We put food on the table, clothes on his back, and then ripped him down at every opportunity." Grandpa snapped. That's when my dad went too far. "Look, Marcus," he said, shaking his head. "You're nearly 30, still clocking hours at Target and playing handyman on weekends. You don't have kids. You're not building a real future. I don't know what Na sees in you, but at some point you have to grow up and do something that actually counts." I looked at him, and I decided it was time. I'd protected my peace for years, built my life in silence, but maybe it was time to speak. "You want to know something funny, Dad?" I said calmly. "That duplex Celia's living in, I don't manage it. I own it." His mouth opened, but I didn't stop. "In fact, I own 5 properties. That side gig. It's a real estate business I started on my own 5 years ago. I flipped my first unit while you were still telling me to aim higher." My mom gasped. My dad blinked like I'd spoken another language. "Last month, after expenses, I brought in over $20,000. Target. I keep the job for steady insurance and because I like it. I don't need it. My portfolio is worth $1.8 million. I have 0 debt. And that beater car you mock paid off. Reliable. Just like me." Silence. "I don't brag," I added, "because I don't need to. But if you're going to lecture me about growing up, maybe check who's signing the checks." Then I turned to my grandparents. "There's more. I've been paying your rent for the past year and covering your gap insurance." My parents' heads snapped toward them. Grandma smiled. "We didn't ask," Marcus insisted. "And one more thing," Grandpa added, standing with surprising strength. "We made Marcus trustee of our estate. He'll decide where the money goes when we're gone." My dad's face turned from red to purple. "This is absurd," he barked. "You've turned my parents against me." "No," Grandma said firmly. "Your behavior did that all on its own." My mom turned to Celia. Say something, she begged. Tell them how wrong this is. But Celia looked tired. They used me too, she said softly. I gave everything for their approval, and they never once asked if I was okay. The silence that followed was heavier than anything I'd ever felt. I stood. Thank you for dinner, I said to my grandparents, but I think we're done here. My dad stood. So that's it. You're just going to walk away when your family needs you. I paused at the door. No, I said. I'm walking away because you taught me to. Then I walked out. I thought walking out of that house would feel heavy, but it didn't. It felt like I was finally shedding the weight I'd carried since I was 12, and my mom told me I was too emotional when I cried after being left out of Celia's honor roll party, or 16 when my dad told me my woodworking ribbon was cute, but that real success would come when I wore a suit and had a corner office. That door didn't slam behind me. It whispered shut, like a chapter quietly ending. Na squeezed my hand the whole ride home. Neither of us said much. We didn't need to. The next morning, I blocked both my parents. Phone, email, social, gone. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even bitter anymore. I was done. Na and I changed the locks, installed cameras, put up a no soliciting sign not for strangers, but for anyone carrying guilt like a weapon. Celia stayed in the duplex, quietly, respectfully. The unit started to look more alive. She potted a small plant on the patio, started jogging in the mornings, stopped wearing scrubs all the time. There was even a Sunday where I caught her laughing out loud while reading a paperback she borrowed from Na's shop. She found a job at a community clinic across town. Not prestigious, not fancy, but hers. I don't make a ton, she told me sipping coffee on the stoop one morning, but the patients actually look me in the eye. They remember my name, not just doctor. They call me Celia. She paused. That never happened at the hospital. Not once. I nodded. We didn't need to say it out loud. This version of her was quieter, realer. Not for applause, just for herself. We didn't become best friends overnight. But something between us softened. She asked questions. She listened. She saw me for the first time in ever. And our parents. They tried. Oh, did they try? Emails from my mom. Subject lines like, "Family is forever. Can we talk? Let's heal together." Inside 2 paragraphs of emotional manipulation, fake nostalgia, and a final jab. "We raised you better than this." I archived them all. My dad wasn't so subtle. He showed up at the duplex once unannounced, banged on Celia's door demanding to talk. She didn't let him in. Later, she texted me, "He's panicking. They're bleeding money." They didn't expect you to walk away and lock the door. I forwarded it to my lawyer. Why? Because after the dinner, I transferred my trustee power of attorney to a third-party estate lawyer. My grandparents agreed. Everything was now legally sealed. No backdoor manipulations, no family majority votes, no guilt leveraging. My dad apparently lost it when he found out. Slammed his fist on a call with the attorney and yelled something about betrayal. The lawyer just calmly said, "You'll need to speak to your son. He's the one with fiduciary control now. They canceled the European cruise, sold the Lexus." Rumors flew through my aunt that they were looking into reverse mortgages. It wasn't revenge, it was consequences. Celia told them she wouldn't mediate, said flat out, "You built this, you fix it." They didn't know what to do with her anymore. One afternoon, while helping me repaint a rental unit, she stopped mid-brushstroke and said, "You know, I used to think I had it all, but I never felt whole until I hit rock bottom." I looked at her. Funny. I started climbing the minute I stopped trying to impress them. We both smiled, not at each other, just at the quiet truth sitting between us. A few weeks later, Grandpa Walt called. "Got something for you," he said. I stopped by that weekend. He handed me a framed photo. It was me standing in front of my first duplex holding a sold sign Na had painted for me. My hair was messy, my hands were stained with caulk and sawdust, but my grin was real. "Put this on the wall," he said. "You earned your place." I choked up. For a man who never wasted words, that was a symphony, and he wasn't done. Grandma June took my hand and pressed something into it, a folded paper. Inside, a note in her careful cursive, "You were always our pride, Marcus. You just took a different path. We saw it, even when they didn't." I keep that note in my desk drawer, next to a key, not to the duplex, to my house, the one I designed from scratch on a plot of land no one thought I could afford. Funny thing, it's next to the same lake my dad used to point to and say, "Someday we'll retire here, when we can finally afford something that says we made it." I bought it last year, didn't tell anyone, didn't need to. I used to think I needed them to be proud of me, that if I just worked harder, smiled more, showed up with the right answers or the right title or the right paycheck, I could finally earn a seat at that table. Not the folding chair in the corner, a real seat, one with a nameplate, one where I was more than the punchline or the backup plan. But I was wrong, because pride rooted in conditions isn't pride at all, it's control, dressed in compliments. And their love had always been like that. Transactional, fragile, loaded with ifs. If you got better grades, if you worked a real job, if you were more like your sister. But life doesn't happen in conditional sentences. It happens in the quiet grind, the lonely builds, the years no one claps for you, the nights spent sanding cabinets while your sister is photographed at galas. It happens in choosing to become something without asking permission. And when I finally stopped performing, when I turned away from their applause and built something real, I discovered a secret they never wanted me to know. Freedom is louder than approval. Now I wake up when I want. I walk through my buildings and talk to tenants by name. I share coffee with Na on our porch, where no one tells us what counts as enough. And sometimes, when I pass the family achievement wall at my grandparents' house, where my photo now hangs next to Celia's, I feel a small tug in my chest. Not for their approval, but for mine. Because I know who I am now, and it's not Marcus the minimum wager. It's Marcus the builder, the landlord, the quiet millionaire, the grandson who showed up, the man who walked away, and meant it. As for my parents, they still send the occasional letter, printed, not handwritten, always the same tone, passive apology, blame wrapped in regret, promises to start over if I'd just come home. But I am home. Home is the life I built brick by brick, silence by silence. And Celia she's building too. Not the life our parents carved out for her, but one of her own. Her clinic's expanding. She brings leftover bagels to Na's shop sometimes. She smiles more now. It's unpolished, but it's real. She once told me, "You were always freer than me." That used to make me angry. Now it gives me hope. Funny how the golden child found peace in the shadows and the family disappointment became the foundation. So if you're watching this and you've been told your worth is tied to your title, your income, your usefulness to people who only clap when it benefits them, this is for you. You're not a failure. You're a builder. You just haven't stopped long enough to realize. The silence they gave you wasn't punishment. It was permission. So build your own scoreboard, hang your own picture, write your own damn rules. And if anyone asks where you went, tell them this: I didn't disappear. I just stopped playing the game. Have you ever had to walk away from a toxic family narrative and build your own life from scratch? Drop your story in the comments below. I read every single one. And hey, if you're one of the quiet ones like me, don't forget to subscribe and share this with someone who needs to hear it.